Thank you very much. Thank you. Let me begin by thanking Chase of the National Building Museum for hosting us in this beautiful venue. This is a venerable Washington building. Some of you may know the history of it. It was, since the Civil War, the Civil War Veterans Pension Building. So if you can imagine, just looking at these walls, that they once were home to veterans who came here after the Civil War, frequently with disabilities, to receive their pension assistance, and therefore bespoke the society's compassion and the nation's gratitude for people who had fought in that horrible war. So we gather today in that spirit of thinking through our obligations to a generation of Americans who have contributed so much and who now find themselves in an advanced age. So we thank the Building Museum for hosting us. I want to thank Kelly Caffarelli and the Home Depot Foundation. Fred Wacker is here as well. Thank you for your support of this and for the excellent work you do across the country in that spirit. Kelly mentioned the support for veterans. Certainly that's a theme that resonates today in this place. Jack, thank you very much for not only your remarks today, but your wonderful work. Jack is a professor at Columbia University in the Mailman School of Public Health, but has held other positions in his career that make him a very serious observer. In fact, I find it hard to imagine anyone who's more qualified to speak on these precise issues. He was CEO of Aetna Insurance, CEO of Mount Sinai NYU Healthcare. Few Americans have had the vantage points that Jack Rowe has had. Thank you for your leadership of this network and your guidance to this project. I also want to express special thanks, and forgive me if I spend an unusual amount of time on thanks and recognitions, but my job here today is twofold. One, to talk about the project as a project, and also some of the substantive dimensions of it. I want to spend just a minute on that first task. I want to thank Jane Hickey and Margaret Dyer Chamberlain of the Stanford Center for Longevity, who are the drivers of this project. I have multiple day jobs and many other responsibilities. They have been the focal point that has kept this project on track. Would you please stand and let us recognize you, Jane Hickey and Margaret, wherever you are. Thank you. Right over here. And Laura Carstensen, who's the founder and the director of the Stanford Center for Longevity and an author in this book, and will have a place on the program later. Laura, thank you for your leadership of this. The MacArthur Foundation, the Home Depot Foundation, MetLife, Freddie Mac, the University of Texas Press, AARP, thank you all for your support of this effort. And I would like to take a moment to thank the authors that are here. I want to thank all of the authors, but a number of them were not able to be with us today. I want to ask those who are here, if I may, as I introduce them, to stand and remain standing, and then we'll recognize them all together. Scott Ball, who is a senior project manager at Duane Plotter Zyberk, who wrote a chapter on the new urbanism in this book with Elizabeth Plotter Zyberk. Robin Black, I know, is here, interior designer, who did a case study of interior design for aging. Laura Carstensen, I mentioned a moment ago. Laura, thank you, a founding director of the Stanford Center, and wrote the chapter that speaks to what's the vision, what's the ideals, where can we go with this? Ellen Dunham-Jones and June Williamson, are architectural professors at Georgia Tech, and June at City College of New York, wrote a chapter based on a book that they had previously written about the suburbs and the baby boom generation as the first suburban generation. As the baby boomers age, the suburbs age, and the particular challenges of retrofitting the suburbs for housing for persons of advanced age. Eleanor Ginsler, director of the Jewish Council for Aging in Rockville, previously of AARP, wrote a chapter focusing on the range of housing for persons who are aging. Adele Hyaton, senior researcher at the Stanford Center for Research, did an excellent chapter on the demographics of aging, the factual basis in this book. Fernando Torres-Gil is associate dean at UCLA. He joined Brian Hoffman, director of economic justice at AARP, on a chapter that spoke to vulnerable populations. I saw Fernando earlier. He's over here. There's Brian. Chris Lineberger, a fellow at the Brookings Institution, joined Michael Glynn, an advisor to senior housing companies, and they did a chapter that speaks to neighborhood and larger sort of regional strategies for cities. Mayor Ron Littlefield is here, the mayor of Chattanooga, and he joined Bob McNulty, who I see back there, founder of Partners for Livable Places, and they did a case study of cities focusing on the great work that Chattanooga has done. These are the authors that I know are here today. Please join me in saying thank you to these people for the great work that they did in this book. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope you have a chance to see the book, and you will see the substantive work that each of these people did. We sought experts in organizing this project. We found them, and they did really some superb work. Let me begin my sort of sense of the overview of this project with the facts that motivated the authors of the book, and they pick up on some of the points that Kelly and Jack have made. I don't want to focus on numbers, but I do want to sort of establish some kind of benchmarks. And some of these are from the text, others are from a more recent study from the Center for Housing Policy, and I want to credit them. The 65-year age and older population in our country, which is now about 40 million people, will grow to 88.5 million people in 2050. That's an increase of 120% or more than double. Now, if 2050 sounds like a long time from now, it's the distance from here back to 1972, when President Nixon was elected to his second term. So it gives you a kind of a sense of the time frame in which the 65-year-old population in the country will double to 88 million people. In that period, the 85-year-old population will grow from 5.8 million to 19 million. It will triple. So the point here is the scale and then the advanced age of a significant portion of that population. Another fact, today, 1/4 of the nation's household, or 26 million out of 112 million households, include at least one 65-year-old now. So that speaks to the currency, the reality of this issue today. Of those 26 million households, 38 million include an older person with a disability. So this speaks to issues of impediments within the physical structures that we live. 40% of women over 65 years of age today live alone. Of persons 65 to 84, 80% of those today are homeowners. They own their own homes. So the reality is that we're talking about people in their present structures. And whatever housing policy we think about or housing outcomes we devise must deal with the reality that a large number of people live at home today, and indications are many will live at home for a long time. Only 4% of the 65-year-old Medicare population in America is in nursing homes, only 4%. So that's not going to be the housing answer for most Americans. Most will live in the structures in which they live today. And finally, in this number of sort of factual points, housing burdens increase as households grow older. So today, 40% of persons 65-year-old or older, the households of 65, have what are defined as very low incomes, which is less than 50% of the area median income, which in practical terms is less than $14,000. So 40% of the households over 65 have incomes less than $14,000. So it speaks to a range of issues, the scale of the issue we confront, the fact that people will live a good deal longer, the currency of it, the fact that people are in their homes today, and affordability issues. Many of these concerns must be addressed. And the central point of this project is the conviction that we can help older Americans live in dignity with self-reliance by recognizing that they're staying at home and that we can make their homes be the basis for a better quality of life. Aging in place is a reality for most Americans. Let me just digress for a moment and describe two related concepts that we sort of encountered in the work on this project. One of them is the work of Dr. James Fries at Stanford, who in the 1980s described a concept he called compression of morbidity. Dr. Fries articulated the idea that measures could be taken to change the long, gradual, drooping arc of aging decline with a pattern that more resembled a relatively horizontal line ending in a rapid drop-off later. So rather than beginning at 60 or so, a steady period of decline and sort of dramatic decline over the years, he postulated that it was possible through a series of measures in our society to hold people on a more horizontal line of capacity, if you will, with a sharper drop-off later in life. If this was accomplished, he pointed out, then lifetime disability could be compressed into a shorter period, and cumulative lifetime disability could be reduced. In other words, instead of a long period of worsening frailty and illness, our bodies would remain relatively intact and then provide a shorter period of decline. Dr. Robert Butler at the International Center for Longevity in New York took that concept of a compression of morbidity for individuals and extended it to the society and articulated a concept he described as the longevity dividend, where the society as a whole would benefit, it's clear, from that approach for individuals, for the society. That is to say, because end-of-life costs are so expensive and so difficult for individuals and families, there's a societal benefit in finding a way to hold people at a higher point for a longer period of time. Now, if compression of morbidity for individuals and a longevity dividend for the society are worthy goals, then it's important for us to consider ways in which they can be achieved. As a society, we know that the answers include better nutrition. We've made great progress because of anti-smoking measures, the access to health insurance and accessible health care, wellness education. We've made immense progress in our society over the last 50 years. But among the elements of a strategy to achieve quality of life for aging Americans is the redesign of physical environments to facilitate wellness, activity levels, social engagement, and self-reliance. A place to live that is physically manageable and emotionally uplifting is connected with peace of mind. Services to support the needs of seniors and support systems can be added to homes to help people remain safe and mobile and fit and strong. As part of this project, I joined with several of the other authors in a series of town hall meetings to listen to older Americans talk about their concerns about their housing. And this is what they told us. Frustration about immobility, dependent on having to be driven for errands, was the number one fear for many senior Americans. They worried about the deterioration of the home that they were in and their inability to sustain it financially, high utility costs for heating and cooling, fear of crime and burglaries in their home and the danger of assaults on the streets in their neighborhood, the overall effect of impairments and frailties as they age, isolation from friends and family, the fear of falling or getting sick without being able to communicate with someone, pain or inadequacy in managing the daily activities within the home, lack of money to undertake home improvements, fear of high volumes of fast-moving traffic on neighborhood streets, and the danger of misusing appliances such as a stove or an oven. What we tried to do in this effort then was to kind of find the common points, the match, if you will, between the demographic realities that I've described and some of these concerns that seniors have about real life in their homes and in the housing environments they envision going forward. What are some of the approaches that our society can address to confront these dual realities? We focused on 4 housing strategies. And in the remainder of my remarks, I want to focus on these 4 themes. The first is the retrofitting of existing homes, allowing people to age in place in the places where they are today, many of whom have already paid for these homes. So they're living in places that are paid out but have some continuing expenses, including taxes. Second, the creation of new housing stock that will be necessary in our society, but the creation of a stock that is appropriate in scale and in its accessorizing for persons of advanced age. So two strategies related to individual housing units, the existing stock and new units. A third strategy focused on the reality of neighborhoods that are aging, where everyone in the neighborhood is getting older, and the kind of connections that can be made to make it possible for people to live without isolation in these existing neighborhoods. As we know, experts refer to them as NORCs, naturally occurring retirement communities. And the fourth strategy focuses on new communities that will be built in our society with an eye on walkability and other strategies to make them available for persons of advanced age. So let me spend a few minutes on each of these as I work through my remarks. 70% of Americans older than 65 live in a single-family detached home, 70%. And about 90% intend to remain permanently in that home as long as they can. The normal process of aging imposes infirmities that create hardships in homes if these environments are designed only for younger people. Some of the hardships are easy to address, like declining eyesight, for example, can be aided by simple interventions based on knowledge about aging, such as brighter light bulbs, better locations for light sources, accessible controls, guide lights for nighttime, contrasting colors on the edges of furniture or steps. Many homes require more significant modifications to support healthy living, and older Americans may ignore these until they're at the point of crisis. Renovations and necessary maintenance can be expensive. There may be a fear of becoming victimized by what some regard as predatory elements in the home remodeling industries. Several of our authors address these points. Esther Greenhouse wrote a chapter on matching. Page 89 of Chapter 7, for example, focuses on physical infirmities and elements of decline and matching them up against specific things that can be done physically to retrofit a home. Eric Dixon wrote on technology solutions, accessorizing the home with things like communication controls and so forth. And Greg Medema, a remodeling contractor, wrote on dimensions of contracting. For years, city officials and remodeling contractors have organized and certified packages of home renovations for energy efficiency and savings in order to weatherize homes. Perhaps it's time now to follow that path and focus on the modification of homes to meet the needs of aging Americans. The need for an affordable and effective package of modifications and regular maintenance to make existing homes more suitable for older people should be organized as a renovation package to create a home that can be used for a lifetime, the lifelong home. A certified renovation package for aging in place should include roll-under kitchen and bathroom sinks, grab bars, curbless showers, lever faucets and door handles, a zero-step entrance, wider doors and hallways, and we have ways in which to support the financing of some of this at the federal as well as local level. The Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Program, local housing trust funds, or perhaps it's time for the nation to begin thinking about a new program like we have focused on weatherization for the retrofitting of homes for persons of advanced age. In fact, I've had several opportunities in recent months, including through the Clinton Foundation, as well as at HUD, to suggest retrofitting of homes for the coming wave of the aging demographic as a job creation strategy, as an economic revitalization strategy, and I think it's up to us, those who care about this subject, to advance the point. The second strategy relates to new homes for aging in place. 31% of homebuyers 55 and older would seriously consider buying a smaller home than the one that they're in, but only 15% of homeowners live in a townhome or a duplex or a multifamily condo unit. As a society, we need to be producing more housing that is of smaller scale, affordably priced, suitable for multifamily use, located in walkable communities, and close to amenities, commercial districts, health facilities, and public transit. The goal should be to support communities in which older persons can choose from a variety of types of homes, single-family and multifamily units, rentals and owner-occupied homes, but the society needs to be producing a prototype, if you will, of smaller, better located, better priced housing. Keith Collins, in chapter 12 of our book, offers what he calls the Freedom Home, and he won a National Association of Home Builders and AARP award several years ago for the design of this home. I think you'll enjoy seeing the photographs of it in the book. There are other forms of housing that can be offered as we go forward. Co-housing is a residential model that locates individual dwelling units around common space, often including dining facilities and a great room, incorporating accessible design. Accessory dwelling units located on the same lot as a primary home can be ideal for multi-generational families. Because of their physical proximity, they provide the added advantage of enabling the younger generation in the main home, if you will, to look in on older residences. Some cities are pioneering in allowing the changing of zoning codes to allow accessory dwelling units. Davis, California, is an example of that. Another housing innovation for people who may wish to continue working is a small self-employed setting, is the live-work flex house, a dwelling that includes workspace. It could be a row house in which the living space is typically above the business, and allow people to engage in a series of occupations long in life, cosmetology, real estate, insurance, other things that people may want to do later in life, and mix it in with their housing choice. Obviously, it is critical that housing for seniors be affordable, and one major strategy involves rental as opposed to ownership. So the use of the low-income housing tax credits, 202 programs, vouchers designed to enable project development, all of these allow for strategies to keep housing affordable. Universal design and elder-friendly homes is a critical point. And in Chapter 11, Hipólito Roldan, who's done a wonderful job of building senior rental housing in Chicago, tells us how to do that. So the two things that I've mentioned to this point are the retrofitting of existing homes, strategies for building age-appropriate new homes. Let me go to the two issues that relate to communities. The first is the recognition of naturally occurring retirement settings in cities all across America where the entire population of a neighborhood is aging. As mayor, I used to go to community meetings almost every night of the week and noticed that there were places where the issues related to mainly the decline of the housing stock because of the challenges posed for people who were older, and almost everyone in that neighborhood was older. It struck me that by smart use of census data, for example, we could have identified neighborhoods where police patrolling could be done in a different way. Instead of the patrolman in the car, patrolmen on the beat or on bicycles, literally checking on people, because we knew that there were different security needs in that neighborhood. We tried it, and it worked. And today, cities have the opportunity to advance specific services for people in neighborhoods, in precise areas of cities, in creative ways. Among those opportunities are the following: support certified home renovation programs, establish accessible senior nutrition and fitness programs, focus utility assistance, provide health consultations and interventions, offer special programs at branch libraries and literacy centers, extend appropriate transportation programs, train and deploy aging specialists, develop the capabilities among those specialists to help seniors with daily activities such as preparing meals, cleaning, and bathing if necessary, tailor community policing to special areas, as I mentioned, and designing local senior services based on statistical evidence and upon advice from community-based organizations about elderly population needs. Larry Frank in Chapter 13, Mayor Littlefield and Bob McNulty in Chapter 14, and Jenny Chin Hansen in Chapter 6 speak to this range of possibilities, physical changes and services support to bind together neighborhoods. It's fascinating the way technology can be employed. We know, for example, at the Village to Village Network program in Boston, as an example, of places where technology is being used to create a virtual community to provide people connections that they had lost. The seemingly implacable barriers caused by the physical realities of neighborhoods that are no longer appropriate for persons who are older can be overcome with technology connections that enable a person to get to the doctor, for example, or be able to get their groceries brought to them on occasion, or be taken to the grocery store, overcoming physical barriers with new communications and human resources applied to the task. It's an expensive proposition, but cities are doing these kinds of things thoughtfully, and the federal government allows, for example, the CLASS Act, a component of the 2010 Health Care Reform Act, to facilitate insurance assistance for services for seniors at particular points in the age cycle. Finally, among these four strategies is planning new communities for aging in place. There are abundant opportunities to design new communities. Harder in infill areas, in denser areas of cities because of the recycling of older neighborhoods and the challenges imposed in that. But there are newly designed communities in less dense first-ring suburbs and in the green grass exurbs. And this is where the work of June Williamson and Ellen Denham Jones was particularly helpful in this project in identifying really creative ways to recycle suburban institutions, places that have been oriented to the automobile. And big shopping malls, for example, can be transformed into community services and walkable places. The work of the new urbanists is particularly important in this regard, in that, for those of you who are familiar with the work of that group of architects that I think have done some of the most creative and advanced work in the country in recent years in thinking through new ways to build communities that are walkable, that are somewhat more socially oriented, transit-oriented development, social in the sense of porches and physical places for people to be able to interact, distance from amenities, shopping and pharmacies and grocery stores, et cetera. The new urbanists have done some wonderful work, and when you get right down to it, the new urbanist work is perfectly suited to people of older age. So we had the opportunity in this project to bring together the work of Scott Ball and Elizabeth Plotter Zyberk and others to think through the specific applications of the new urbanist ideas, their progression of thinking from regional to citywide to neighborhood to the individual block and structure, and how we can think in communities from the perspective of persons of advanced age, modifying zoning codes to offer expanded housing choices, and many other things. Well, that's the framework that we use to organize this project. But there are many other pieces that were addressed along the way. For example, Fernando Torres Gil led an effort to speak to the role of vulnerable populations. And as I say, June Wilson and Ellen Denham Jones on the suburbs, Eric Dishman to apply technology and accessorize homes, and Richard Green to help us think through, along with Anthony Downs, some of the political and financial challenges going forward. Let me close my remarks today by just citing one of the motivating factors for me in working on this project, which is my own experience in my hometown of San Antonio. First, as the mayor, in neighborhoods, as I mentioned, talking to people, but very personally, the experience that I've had with my mother, who is 87 years old and lives in the house that she and my dad bought in 1945, 2 years before I was born, and she lives in it now. She is a very active person. In fact, I talked to her last evening on my way here, and she had just come from a day-long meeting at a local university that lasted from noon until 4 o'clock, and she went on for almost as long describing the experience that she'd had. Her active life is, without a doubt in my mind, enabled, enhanced by the quality of the home that she lives in. It's an older house. It's a frame bungalow in a poor Hispanic neighborhood of San Antonio, but it is her home. In the closing part of my chapter, I wrote the following: I have seen with my own eyes how a safe, decent, and financially secure place to live can add vitality to a person's older years. I know that my mother's ability to live in the cherished home she shared with my father and in the rooms where she raised her children is a big part of the life force that enables her to stay active, involved, upbeat, and determined to make the most of each day. She knows her way around the house and knows every creak and crack after 65 years there. She's deeply rooted in the neighborhood and follows the goings-on among the younger generations. She gains energy from the warm sun and the breeze as she tends to her potted plants and fruit trees. In short, she loves her house. It's part of her, intellectually and spiritually. Not everyone can live in a home with as much tenure or memory as my mother, but I have a deep conviction that a safe and decent home is a great boon in every person's life. We need to make sure that every American, especially those whose older age makes the quest for stability and peace of mind more urgent, has a safe and decent place to call home. Thank you very much to everyone who supported this project, everyone who contributed to it, and everyone who's here today. Thank you very much.